Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. My name is Matthew. I'll be your host today, and I'm joined by Mr. David Hart, who has an impressive list of things that he's been involved in. We're going to get into all of those today. David, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us today, David. Before we get going, do you want to tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm working with, and we'll probably come into the reason why I'm doing this, but I'm working with agencies specifically who are looking to pivot into SaaS. And interestingly enough, that seems to be quite a rich well of interest for agency owners. So people who've started their agencies, they've worked for clients for a little bit, and now they're thinking, how do I scale my business? How do I kind of turn what I know, that IP, into something that I can actually sell and scale and build some kind of financial longevity, let's say, around my IP. So that's kind of specifically different agencies at different stages, but it's really just helping them kind of figure out how to grow their SaaS bit of what they do.
Okay. And when you say agencies, what kind of agencies are we talking about?
Typically, I'm working with digital agencies. They tend to be sort of software agencies. So people who have either kind of build websites or products, digital products for people. But I'm also working with a company that's more of a kind of consultant, like a data consultant. It's anyone really who's kind of thinking about productizing the kind of services that they're providing, really. So it could be any kind of service provider, but generally they tend to be technical businesses.
Before we started with the recording, you told me a little bit about a move and an idea and some of the things you got involved in. Do you want to tell us how all of this came about for you?
Yes, so it's quite a long story. So I started my own agency with two others back in 2004, so nearly 20 years ago. And the whole time we were working with our clients, we were always kind of dabbling in products. Products always was something that I guess kind of interested in us, and we always had this like a little bit of a fantasy that one of these days, one of these products was going to blow up and it was going to make us super rich and everything. But so we were always meddling, always had ideas, and a few things happened really. But one, we kind of, I think we got a bit sick of it, a bit tired of the kind of, I guess, treadmill of running an agency. So I'm talking sort of 13, 14 years in. We were kind of like, we're kind of probably done with it. Actually, a bit earlier than that, maybe, 11, 12 years in, I think. We really want to have a future in product, and we don't quite know how. We'd had a few kind of quite successful side projects, but none of them really, really went crazy. And I think part of the reason was because we were always being dragged back into the clients, what the clients were looking for and what they were, if the client shouted, you like drop everything and figure out the client. But we had this idea, we were going to build a portfolio of products, and I went to speak to some investors and said, hey, look, we're an agency and we've got these products and we want to build new products, and can you give us some money, please? And they pretty much laughed. I took this guy out for lunch and he pretty much laughed me out of the restaurant. And I was like, what? I don't understand. Why is that a bad idea? He goes, well, I don't understand what I'm investing in. Like, are you an agency? Are you a product company? You'll sort of say you've got some products, you've got some future idea. That's not really an investable proposition. If you really want to have a proper conversation with a VC, you're going to have to be committed to what you're doing. So you can't have like millions of things going on at the same time. So at the same time, I think I mentioned to you before we had this, we started recording, was we couldn't ever get above about £1.5 million a year. And I think part of that was just, I don't know, we were just running as fast as we could. And £1.5 million isn't nothing, but it wasn't really the scale that we wanted to get it to, given how long we've been doing it. So long story short, we eventually decided, look, if we really want to do this, we're going to have to do this properly. So we decided to sell the agency and focus entirely on the sort of product that we were most excited about, which was a product called ScreenCloud, which is a digital signage SaaS business. So allowing people to manage content on multiple public-facing screens, and workflows and device management and all that kind of stuff. So that was the product that we went with. And because we were kind of going to do that sort of idea of like one product, get rid of the agency, we could then have proper conversations with investors. So we raised some money, we sold the agency, and then ScreenCloud was born, and it was by far and away the best financial decision we ever made. ScreenCloud today is like doing north of 20 million. It's 150 people. The valuation of a SaaS business compared to our agency business is based on a multiple of recurring revenue rather than a multiple of EBITDA. So for many, many reasons, it's been the best financial decision. And yeah, that's where we are. I mean, I am, as I sort of said earlier, I've now stepped away from the day-to-day of the business. I'm working with agencies. I'm still on the board, still got my shares, still a big, cheerleader for the business, but I'm actually not involved in the kind of day-to-day running of it anymore.
So there's a couple.
So that's
things,
it in a nutshell. Yeah.
There's a couple of things I'd like to touch on there. The people you started working with, you were friends beforehand, or were you business partners?
Yeah. Well, we worked together at another agency beforehand, so we kind of all left at a similar time, but not the same time. We didn't leave to start the agency, but we kind of came together quite quickly after leaving our old agency and decided to create an agency ourselves called Cogent. But so yeah, we'd worked with each other before. We knew each other's strengths and weaknesses and things. So I guess it was we knew it would work. The three of us, we had quite complementary skills. Yeah.
That's quite nice. Yeah, it must have been quite a setback for you. You said that first person you spoke to, they basically, laughed at you when you proposed your idea. Must have been a bit disheartening at the time. You had to, find your motivation, rethink your whole strategy. What was that like?
Yeah, it was. I suppose at the time at that point we were just investigating what was possible, and to my mind, I thought it was a great idea. I thought, look, hey, I think our best SaaS product at one point was doing about £30,000 a month, and I was like, well, if you get three of those, you're doing over £1 million. So I was thinking, we'll just build a portfolio of these products. But what I didn't realize is it needs so much attention. So to have three probably wouldn't have been very realistic. And actually, the more you're diluted, the less, the less kind of potential. You're not going to necessarily, make the most of the potential of that product. But it was a bit of a knockback, but it was a bit of a reality check as well. I don't mind being knocked back, to be honest. I mean, as someone who, built and sold an agency, I've spent a lifetime of being knocked back. So I don't take it too personally. I think the most important thing is to learn from it and go, okay, well, what was the problem? Why was this not not an issue? Why was this an issue for this particular person? And actually, when we went to raise investment for ScreenCloud, when we were kind of committed to that full time, again, we got loads of knockbacks. Even when we were doing really well, even when we were doing, when the company was, doing £25,000-30,000 a month, and more than that, yeah, sort of, even when we were doing, like over £1 million, £3 million, $3 million a year, we started talking in dollars because of our investments came in dollars, and most of our customers were in North America. So I might flip from pounds to dollars. But even when we were, doing in the millions of dollars of annual recurring revenue, we still get knocked back all the time when we talk to potential investors. People have various reasons for knocking you back. And it might not necessarily be anything to do with the quality of your business. It might just be they don't get it, or they've been burned in that industry before, and they've just got to, all sorts of reasons why you can get knocked back. But yeah, I think it was good. It was a bit of a wake up call. Like, we're not going to magically grow this business just by dabbling with lots of side projects. If an investor's not interested in it, it probably tells you something, at least to reconsider, to just double check that what you're doing actually does make sense.
So you changed your thinking, you went back, simplified your idea or perfected your ideas, and everything was born, and your growth has been quite rapid.
Yeah, I mean, we launched at the beginning of 2016, and actually it was if you've ever run a SaaS business, you'll know that it's really, really slow to get going, because when I ran an agency, when we first started, we had a few people that we knew, and we just went out and we found a few clients, and suddenly you're fine kind of thing within 2 or 3 months. It was kind of like, yeah, great, got work. But when you're selling SaaS, especially with us, because it was very low cost, average contract value. So at the time, we were just selling the license was $25 per screen per month. And most people were doing 2, 3, 4 screens. So the average contract value was pretty low. And, you're layering on the first month, maybe we did $300 or $400. And then the next month, maybe did another $500 or $600. And I was like, oh my God, at this rate, if I start to extrapolate that out, it's going to take us like a century to get to where we were with our agency. But actually what we found anyway, is that that begin to build up a head of steam, and then it really starts to, and then at one point it feels suddenly you're strapped to a rocket, and I think it took us 18 months to get to $1 million.
Wow.
And then I think it's 6 months to get to 2 million, another 6 months to get to 2 million. And then I think from $1 million, when we were at $1 million, a year later we were at 3.5 million or 3.25 million. So we were at that point, at the early stage, we were growing really, really fast. It's a challenge, because you're also looking into how you're going to, when you're in an agency and you're growing out of margins, you're recruiting, but you're recruiting within, in a reasonable fashion. When you're growing at 300% a year, you're kind of recruiting for what your company's probably going to be like in 6 months' time. And that's quite scary. It's quite like, well, how many people are we going to need? I mean, are we going to need a load more salespeople? Are we going to need a load more engineers? So that was pretty crazy. But it obviously it did start to, eventually you can't carry on growing at 300% indefinitely. And then the pandemic hit, and that kind of kicked us a little bit in the head as well. But the company's still growing, significantly year on year, but obviously not at 300% anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, there's that classic SaaS textbook growth of, I don't know if you heard of it, triple, double, double, double. So once you get to $1 million, next year you get to 3 million, next year you get to 9 million, and the year after you get to 18 million. So you're tripling, then double, double, double. And we did the triple pretty much. And then we were on track to double. And then that's when the pandemic kicked in. So, which was a bit of a challenge for a bit, but it took us 6 months, I think, to get back to where we were pre-pandemic. But yeah, definitely that early stage was I'd never felt or seen growth like it in anything I'd ever done before. It was pretty, I loved it. I loved that. That was probably the funnest part of my time at ScreenCloud.
I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit, because it sounds like it was a bit of a tsunami. And when you realized what was happening, how quickly it was growing, things were tripling. What did you do? How did you come to terms with that and say, right, what do I do next? It's the first time you're in that situation. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of people depending on you, and these things are just shooting forward.
Yeah, well, fortunately, we had really good investors at this point who had a lot of experience in backing other, fast-growing SaaS companies. So they could give us a bit of an, heads up on what to expect and what kind of people we needed to be looking at, and how we might structure the team in the future. We also realized at this point as well that we built the platform for small businesses, and as our investors pointed out, unless you're going to have to start selling to enterprise if you really want to get anywhere close to $100 million in annual recurring revenue, because if you're just going to be selling $50 a month, you're going to have to you need like hundreds of thousands of customers. I can't do the maths, but yeah, a lot of customers to get you to 100 million. So we also then had to rebuild the platform, so it was more enterprise ready. So there's a lot going on. There was like future planning in terms of what people do we need to hire, what are the structures of those teams going to look like, but also we need to rebuild the platform as well. So we were hiring against effectively building the platform from the ground up. It was pretty hairy times. And one of the things that I found is when we first started, and it might have been a little bit of an agency sort of mentality, is that we were probably hiring junior people, great junior people that we could move up to, what I called like a rough diamond. So people who really had great potential, but they weren't super expensive. And I remember our investors saying, dudes, you need to spend money. Like, we wouldn't say this to most of our portfolio, but I think this might be a sort of agency mentality, because most agency founders grow out of margins. You need to spend harder and hire quicker, and hire people that you obviously you train some people on the job, but you need to hire people who have already been there and done that. So, if you're hiring a VP of sales, for example, and you're at 2 million, ideally you want to hire a VP of sales that's maybe gone on the journey, maybe not as a VP, but certainly in the sales team, going from say 5 million to 10 million, so they can sort of help you anticipate what you're going to come up against. So yeah, we were kind of it definitely, we definitely had to move from, I guess, sort of a more junior generalist team to sort of finding specialists and people who could hire into their teams as well. So yeah, it was lots happening in rapid succession, for sure.
And now tell us a little bit about your decision to step back a little. You said you're still involved, you're still an ambassador for the company, you still have your shares, but you've taken a step back. You mentioned earlier that you're taking time to write a book as well.
Yeah, so well, one of the things I did as part of the expansion is move to California, partly on the advice of our investors. They said, look, one of you probably needs to be out in California. So moved out there, helped sort of build the team in Los Angeles. And then I think some people love big companies, like they love kind of managing big teams. What I really love is the kind of, I mentioned it earlier, the fun bit that I really like is the bit where you roll your sleeves up and you get involved and it's crazy and it's gnarly and you're having to react quickly and you're having to be creative on the fly, on the spot. And I really like that. And what I didn't like, or I don't like, is managing lots of people and spending all my days on Zoom managing people and people issues. It's like some people love it, but for me, I'm much happier being creative and sort of figuring stuff out and just making things happen and fixing things and making things and identifying opportunities and experimenting and all that kind of stuff. So it's for me, it's like that kind of the early stage. One of the things that it's a bit of, I don't know who actually originally said this, but going from $0 to $1 million is impossible. Getting from $1 million to 10 million is improbable. And getting from 10 million to 100 million is inevitable. And for me, that inevitable stage, it's super, super hard, don't get me wrong, but it's not, I mentioned earlier about being strapped to a rocket ship. It's the early stage. It's the sort of 0 to 1, 1 to maybe 5, 5 to 10. It's that early bit that I really, really love. And I also found when I was sort of talking to people that a lot of agency founders were saying a similar kind of thing, like, oh, I love, I'm so impressed with what you guys have achieved. I'd really love to do that. I don't know where to start. And I kind of heard it so many times that I thought, maybe this is where I could actually enjoy myself again, which is basically go and help those companies and sort of help them figure out how they can go on a similar journey. And what I found is everybody is different. Like we were quite extreme. We were like, we're going to sell our agency and then become a SaaS company. We kind of did the simultaneously, but others might not want to do such an extreme result. They might want to kind of maintain the services and just grow the SaaS. Others are sort of really early stage and it's like, well, I've got a few ideas, but I don't know if they're any good. So yeah, that's the bit that I really love, is just like working with founders just to say, like, how do we make this a success quicker? How do we make sure that you're not betting your whole agency on this, like perhaps we were? How do you mitigate some of those risks, and what state do you need to be in to put you in the best position to kind of grow the SaaS quickly and be able to have what we did really, which was a scalable business, one that was valuable in terms of what we were creating long term. Because that's the other thing. At one point, someone tried to buy our agency, and I realized that the amount that we could sell our agency for, given how much we'd sacrificed in terms of salary. When you ride in your own agency, you don't pay yourselves perhaps as much as you would if you'd work for another company. And I was like, it doesn't really compensate us for that. Whereas the valuations that we've had on our SaaS business, who knows? I believe it when the day comes, but potentially that's quite a life-changing amount of money that could be worth in the future. So that was, that's a really interesting thing. I like to work with founders to get them to kind of think through realistically what they expect to get maybe 5-10 years down the line. And if they're happy with that, or if they're not, what can we do about that? What can we do to make them feel that their hard work is going to be properly valued and rewarded in the long term?
I think there'll be a lot of people that will be very grateful for that experience and you sharing your journey with them and being able to provide some sort of a comfort when people are making those decisions, and you can say, oh, no, we've been down that road. It's not the right way to go. I think that's brilliant.
Oh, the book. So the book's called Productize. It's not actually, I'm determined it's going to be published in the spring. It's Productize, stop selling your time, start selling your ideas. And really it's partly about the journey that I've just described, but it's also more of a kind of a guide, I guess, to agency founders who are looking to kind of make that transition, because there are quite a lot of moving parts, right? You need to figure out what to do with your current agency. Are you going to do what we did and sell it or close it down, or are you going to kind of try and keep it going and build the SaaS up on the side? And what's the pros and cons of that? Are you going to go for investment? How do you validate whether or not this product is a good idea? And how do you make sure that you kind of don't end up sinking a load of money and a load of time into something that nobody wants? Because I've been there and done that as well. What does good look like? What can you expect as you start to grow? What kind of things do you need to be tracking? All those sorts of things, really. So sort of like that is kind of the book that I wish I'd read 7 years ago. And it would have hopefully meant that we did some good things, but we made plenty of mistakes as well. And even prior to that, we made plenty of mistakes. I mean, it took us almost 12, 13 years of experimenting with products to also, by the time we'd got to ScreenCloud, I think there was a lot of things that we knew what would work and what wouldn't work in terms of effective product. But even then, after we launched ScreenCloud, there were other things that we probably could have done better. And also, I remember that feeling right at the beginning of almost like it felt like staring a little bit into the abyss. Like, we've got this thing that's an agency that's making us money and it's paying our rent and it's putting food on the table. Why are we going to give it up on a dream of SaaS? It did feel a little bit like a stepping into the unknown and hoping for the best. And actually, we were very lucky, and it wasn't just luck. I guess there was some skill as well, but I do put a lot of it down to luck as well. But I think had I known some of the things I know now, I could have probably done things which would have, I guess, reduced that kind of anxiety, but also made sure that we went on the right path. Because early on we did a few things. We spent the first investment that we raised, we spent it all on people that we didn't need. We started advertising on Google when it was way too early. So we just ran out of money, and we were like, oh. So then we had to put our own money back in again and raise some. It was just a few false starts. And if had I known a little bit more, we probably wouldn't have done that. So yeah, that's kind of what the book's about, really. It's like for anyone who's thinking of doing that journey and just wants a little bit of advice and a little bit of reassurance and hopefully a little bit of cheerleading that they can do it. I mean, the good thing about as an agency, you might think it's you're a bit of an outlier if you have dreams of becoming a SaaS company, but which is true. But there are a lot of SaaS companies that started as agencies, like people like MailChimp, Basecamp, Hootsuite, Moz, ScreenCloud. There's quite a few out there that actually, when you dig underneath it, you see that originally they were consultancies or consultants. Zendesk, I think, were 3 consultants before, who were consulting whilst they were building Zendesk and things like that. So it's not an unusual route. And I actually think that being an agency founder gives you certain superpowers that other SaaS founders might not have. So, for example, you're very good at managing money in a capital efficient way because you probably had to grow out of margins rather than, getting investment. You're very good at bringing your A game to multiple things at multiple times. And as I said early on in the SaaS journey, you are definitely a generalist. You're just having to do everything from customer service to legal to HR to everything. You've probably got a team in a box already if you're a digital agency. So you've probably got people there. You probably already understand those customers because you've probably been building stuff for them already. So there's lots and lots of things when you look at it as an agency founder, you've already got a bit of a head start. So it's not surprising, I think, that a lot of SaaS companies span out of agencies or consultancies originally.
I just want to say thanks, but before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to mention that I may have forgotten? Anything you think is important for the people watching? Any last words, so to speak?
I suppose the only thing I would say, so this is the other thing that I find when I talk to agency founders, is that there is a fear of making a mistake. It's almost like the fear of making a mistake is bigger than the fear of not potentially reaching your potential. So I do think there is, when people are thinking about this, think also about don't necessarily think about the cost of making a mistake, think about the cost of inaction, because quite often I speak to founders and they're like, yeah, I really want to do this, but maybe in 6 months. It's always 6 months, right? Because 6 months isn't too far away for it never to happen, but it's not too close for you to actually have to do anything about it. So I would have that kind of, if I was having a conversation with you and you're kind of thinking about this, how would you feel if I was having the same conversation in 24 months' time and you're still thinking about it? It's that cost of inaction, I think. It's hard and it's scary, but actually, if you do it the right way and you think about doing it in kind of measured milestones, it's not like betting the house on red. It actually is, it's achievable. And, if you get it right, it might be the very best thing you ever did. So yeah, I definitely think about that. Think about the cost of inaction rather than the cost of making a mistake that could easily be rolled back.
I just want to say thank you. It's been a very candid conversation today. You've spoken openly and told us all these things. I'm sure the people watching will find a lot of use in what you've said today. And I like that. Think about the cost of inaction. I'm going to carry that one with me. So yes, David, thank you very much. Let us know when your book is out. If anybody's interested, I suppose they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, or just davidhart.io. I do a week, if you're interested in this as well, I do a weekly newsletter called Productize, which comes out on a Saturday, and it's just all about this kind of stuff. So if that's interesting as well, free to sign up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, do that. But yeah, hit me up.
Fantastic, David. Thank you so much. You have a beautiful day further. And yes, I look forward to your book release.
Thanks, Matt.